about midpoints and distances. So midpoints and distances here, or distance and midpoints. Okay, so distance in geometry, distance is finding the length, the distance between 2 points. Okay, so for example, here in the figure, you see from point A to point B. You can find the distance from point A to point C, or from point B to point C. Okay, if you notice, it's easy to find the length or the distance between 2 points on the line that is vertical or horizontal. Why? Because you simply count the number of units that you have from one point to the next. For example, if you count from B to C, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's why it's 5 units, okay? From B, you jump 1 grid down, and that will be your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how you count it. You don't start from 1 in B and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's gonna be wrong. See, from C to A or from A to C, you can start at any point that you want. Let's say from C. You start from C, it's like 1. Jump to the first unit, that's your 1 starts. That's where you start with your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 units. So these two, the BC and the AC, or CB, does not matter who comes first, or CA, BC and CB talks about the same thing. This this line here, this horizontal line. And then you can also have AC or CA, talks about the same thing, this horizontal line from C to A or from A to C. Distance is always positive. Remember, you cannot, if you go around Bubble Dub, if you ride the bus, like most of you, or maybe you just have a drive around Bubble Dub, I believe you notice this signs on the side, like you see M5, meaning you're 5 miles away from the starting point of where that road has a 0 mile. Then all the way Mora Ngardmao Falls, I think that's where you see a 25 m all around, and then you go back to Irai and back to the bridge and back to Koror. You see those things. You see, there's no negative. Okay, there's no negative distance. You don't see negative 5 miles or negative 3 miles. So when we talk about distance in geometry, the answer is always positive. If you will be asked, what's the length of your table at home? What's the length of your table at home? You won't say, oh, teacher, it's a negative 6 feet. It's positive, so it's 6 feet, like that. Or, oh, teacher, the length of our house is 20 feet. That's how wide our house is, like that. So it's always positive. Now, when we talk about distance, there's 2 cases, like this vertical and horizontal line. First case is when the 2 lines are on a straight line. When the 2 points, are lying on a straight line, either standing or horizontal. I say standing, vertical, or horizontal. Okay, so if the points are just making a straight line, horizontal, or vertical, or horizontal, then you simply count the number of units, or if the graph is provided, or we can do a simple distance formula between 2 points by subtracting their ordinate. So from P to Q is you subtract whatever is the coordinate for A and whatever is the coordinate for B. That's why we have this line before B and after A, before A and after B. What line is that? We call that absolute value, because our answer should end up to be positive. It does not mean you always do A minus B or the left point minus the right point. It can be the other way around, the right point minus the left point, as long as when you solve, when you give your final answer should be positive. And then we'll go back to coordinate plane later. So for example, here, find the distance from C to D, or use the number line to find CD. When you say CD, it means from C Elmora D, okay? From C Elmora D, C to D. Okay, so what is the coordinate of C? It's -5. What's the coordinate of D? It's 1. So these are the two numbers that you subtract. Either way you want to subtract them, it's fine. You can have, like the solution in the book, -1 minus 5. -5 minus 1. Okay, -5 minus 1. The formula says minus first number minus the second number. So -1 minus 5, absolute value of -6. Therefore, the final answer is 6 without the lines on the side. Okay, you have to write your answer as just 6 without the lines on the side. Or if you do the other way around, it can be 1 minus -5. Again, it can be 1 minus -5. So 1 minus -5 minus -5 is +5. Remember, if two signs before a number, if the signs, if there are two the same sign before a number, then those two signs will be combined as one, and if they're the same, it becomes positive. So negative is positive. So the 1 minus -5 becomes 1 plus 5, and so 1 plus 5 is the absolute value of 6, or 6. You see this one here. This is what I'm talking. 1 minus -5 becomes 1 plus 5, absolute value of 6, and then you take out you remove the absolute value sign, just leave it as 6. So you see, both process gives you the same answer, +6. Okay, so what about here? KM. What is the length? What is the distance of line segment KM? The graph is given. If the graph is given, you can count, you can jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 units. The same thing if you do other ways from M or a K. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So KM is 6. So I know you can now answer JM and KL and JM, KL, and JL. So that's how easy it is. But of course, if you're not given with a number line, but just the coordinates of the numbers, then, or if the number line is too long, okay, you don't want to jump from one. You simply locate the first point and telang, second point and telang, and then you just minus them. Or else if you jump, you might jump on something, you forget what's the number now, and then you go back. Okay, to be accurate, use the formula. To be accurate, we use the formula. Okay, now the case 2 is, what if the lines are like this from B to A? There's a slope. It's a diagonal line. It can be this way or the other way. The main point is, it's not a straight horizontal line. It's not a straight vertical line. What are we going to do? We cannot just minus a B and A, because this time, these two, we have to use the ordered pairs of B and A. So that's the time we use what we call distance formula. Distance formula would like to say hello to each and every one of you. Distance formula is one of the most common formula that we will be using in this class. We will not stop here. Rather, this is just an introduction, and this is a very important lesson that you need to be familiar. Also, kung know how to use distance formula, the next lesson, which is just an application of distance formula, will be very easy for you. Okay, you just need to know how to use the distance formula. Distance formula uses two ordered pairs. Okay, if you see here, each ordered pair is a combination of an x coordinate and a y coordinate. So you have 2 points. First point will be your x1, y1. Your second point will be your x2, y2. Again, each ordered pair will be xy, xy. Okay, take note of that. That's how you represent your ordered pair with x1, y1, x2, y2, because these are the ones, the numbers that they represent are the ones that you will fill in the formula here. D, which will be replaced with the points that you're gonna solve for their distance, is equal to the square root of, it's a very long square root, x2 minus x1. Okay, again, that's x2 minus x1. It doesn't say x1 minus y1. Okay, okay, x2 minus x1. So you get your x2 from the second point, minus, formula says minus, then you put minus sign after you write the first number, and then x1. So whatever is your x1, you write it after the minus sign and close, and then squared, plus, open parenthesis, y2 minus y1. Again, it's y2 minus y1, and yaka x2 minus y2, not x2 minus y2. Okay, it's y2 minus y1. So you get the number here, put it here, minus, get the number over here, put it here, that's your y1. Close, and then you square. Clear. Let's apply that one here. So we can use Pythagorean theorem or distance formula, but we will be using distance formula. If you see the Pythagorean theorem requires you to graph the points and then draw a right triangle from it. But the distance formula does not require you to graph the points. You just need to identify your ordered pairs. So we have here, find the distance from R to S. Find the distance from R to S. R is at 5, 1. S is at -3, -3. Remember, ordered pair, going back to algebra 1, the first number is X, the second number is Y. So if it's 5, 1, 2, 3, positive 5 is to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then your Y is positive 1, so you go up. That's why point R is over here, 1 unit up. Then your point S, how do we locate? -3. First number is -3, which is referring to X, negative to the left, 1, 2, 3, -3. -3 for the Y coordinate, it's going down because it's negative, so -1, -2, -3, and that's why S is over here. There's no any other location of R and S with these coordinates, 5, 1 for R, -3, -3 for S, other than this one here. Okay, so we're just given with this. This graph is for method 1. Okay, this graph is for method 1. We don't need the graph in method 2, which is what we're gonna use. Okay, so method 1, method 2, I mean. So R is 5, 1. R is the first letter given, so might as well just use it as your first point. So it's gonna be x1, y1. So your x1 is 5, your y1 is 1. S, which is your second point, will be your x2, y2. Your x2 is -3, your y2 is -3. Clear? Okay. Now we will use the distance formula, x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Put the numbers from these two ordered pairs to your formula. Okay, it says x2 minus x1. So what's our x2? -3. Where did we get this -3? From here. Okay, from here. Okay, minus, the formula says minus, not my knees, not my toes, minus 5. Where did we get 5? From the first number here. See, -3 minus 5. And then plus, y2 is -3 again. It happens that the y2 is -3 because that's the second number of your second point. So that's your y2, -3. Minus, because the formula says you have to put a minus sign after the y2. Then your y1 is +1. So +1 here is +1. So sign numbers, algebra, -3 minus 5 is -8 squared. -3 minus 1 is -4 squared. Ali, tiang example ra negative. Please be careful. Even if the number is negative, when you square them, the answer is positive. So -8 squared is +64. -4 squared is +16. So 64 plus 16 is a square root of 80. Okay, now since you are not allowed to use calculator, you may write square root of 80, but you can also simplify this. You can also simplify that one with what? With writing it as 80 is 16 times 5, right? So remember, simplifying radicals, we take note of the perfect square numbers: 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144. How do we get those? 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 7 times 7, 8 times 8, 9 times 9, 10 times 10, and so on. So 8 squared means 8 times 8, hindi ka 8 times 2. No, 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 no. 4 squared, negative 4 squared is negative 4 times negative 4. That's why it's positive 16. Now, going back to 80. 80 can be simplified in such a way that you split it into numbers that when you multiply, the answer is 80. But when you split it, make sure one of the numbers is a perfect square. It does not, the teacher was say 8 times 10. It does not make sense to split it as 8 times 10 because 8 and 10 are non-perfect square. Okay? What about teacher 4 times 20? Still can do because 4 is a perfect square. But think about some more bigger numbers so that you don't need to simplify it again. 680 can be 16 times 5, right? So 16 is a perfect square. So if you write it as 16 times 5, I'm sorry, I cannot try to write square root. Let me, where is it? Okay. So it's gonna be square root of 16, follow times 5. Okay, that's 16 times 5 equals, since now it's 16 times 5, 16 is a perfect square, then 16 can go out. Square root of 16 is what? 4. So 4, 16 goes out, becomes 4, but there's still a number inside because it's not a perfect square. So 4 square root of 5. There you go. 4 square root of 5. 8.94 is when you use calculator, but I don't need the 8.94. I need an answer that is represented by a radical. If it's not simplifiable, BRA, leave it as a square root of 113 or leave it as a square root of 37, like that. No need to give me a point something. Clear? Clear. Okay. So that is distance. Okay. And that is distance. Let me erase that one. I don't know how to erase. Clear. Clear all drawings. Okay. That is distance. Now, let's go to midpoint. Yesterday, we talked about between. I mean, 1-2 talks about between. When you say between, it's somewhere just between 2 points, somewhere, anywhere, as long as it's in between 2 points. But when we say midpoint, there is a specific location. Midpoint is exactly halfway. It's the point between P and Q, wherein PM is equal to MQ. This one, illustrating this. So midpoint is halfway between. So when you say PM is the midpoint, you're telling of PQ, then you have to, you mean that P to M is the same from Q to M. Okay? When I ask you what's the midpoint from PCC to Palau High School, there should be one location only, either in the gate in the gate close to Esteban. If that's the midpoint, then only there. You cannot have a midpoint there and then others answer, no, teacher, it's near the cafeteria or near Bank of Hawaii area. No, midpoint has a specific location. It's halfway. Okay, it's half. It's half. When you say midpoint, it's half. And that's why you see that over 2 in the formula, because you simply divide it into 2. So the formula of midpoint, two cases for 2 points on a straight line is you simply, going back here, these are representing a number, simply add the numbers and then divide it by 2. So a plus b divided by 2. Now, another case is when the line is diagonal. That means it contains x and y coordinates, ordered pairs. Then still we have x1, y1, x2, y2. And just like how we identify x1, y1, x2, y2 in our distance formula, the same thing for the midpoint formula. So for example here, can be a straight horizontal, it can be a vertical. This is obviously only one line, straight line. So we don't need this formula. We just need the first one. Okay, the coordinates of P and Q are -20 and 40. Okay, find the coordinate of the midpoint of PQ. So what's the midpoint of PQ? There's only one midpoint. Cannot be at -10 or 30. Maybe teacher at 20. Oh, maybe teacher at 0. We need to solve. Okay, so you add the two. -20 plus. Okay, take note it's plus. Okay, for midpoint you plus the numbers. You plus. You don't minus. Distance is you minus. Midpoint you plus. Okay, so -20 plus 40. Divide 2. Okay, so that is because your P is at -20, your Q is at 40. So 20 divided 2 is 10. Positive. -20 plus 40 is +20 divided 2, 10. So the midpoint is at 10. That's the midpoint. There's no any other location for the midpoint. But when the 2 points are in the coordinate plane here, okay, find the midpoint of JK. You see, you don't see a graph because you don't need a graph. Okay, you just need to identify x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, x1, y1, x2, y2. And then use the midpoint formula. This is the midpoint formula. So x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. You're looking for a midpoint. It's another point on the line. That means if you're looking for the midpoint of ordered pairs, then your answer is also an ordered pair. Okay, it's like you're looking an address, the address of the midpoint between the address of the midpoint between 2 points. Okay, so if the first point has an address represented by an ordered pair and the second point has an address represented by an ordered pair, then the midpoint must also be represented with an ordered pair. Okay, so we have here. So again, x1, you can start from the first point given will be your x1, y1, and then the second point will be x2, y2. Does not matter. You can have x1, y1, this one. The 6 and 1 will be x1, y1, and then this 2 is x2, y2. CBL. Just be consistent. Okay, so like here, this is our x1. This is our y1. This is our x2, 6 is our x2, then 1 is our y2. Okay, so that's why we now have -1 plus 6 all over 2, comma, 2 plus 1 over 2. Sign numbers. How we solve this? -1 plus 6 is +5. Okay, you minus the number because they're different. You minus and you copy the sign of the bigger number. 6 minus 1 is 5, +5, because the bigger number has a sign of positive. Over 2. 2 plus 1, like that one, very simple math. 2 plus 1 is 3 over 2. Okay, so your midpoint is 2 and 1/2 and 1 and 1/2. Okay, if it's a midpoint and an improper fraction, you write it as a mix. It's easy to identify where is 2 and 1/2 rather than you say 5 over 2. Where is that 5 over 2 in the graph? You cannot find it properly and easily. You need to make it a mixed number. So 2 and 1/2, it's somewhere 2. It's between 2 and 3, and then you go up 1 and 1/2. So it's between 1 and 2 going up. But we don't need to find that one. We don't need to graph. So this is our answer. It's another point. Okay. Now, any question? course, you cannot ask. This is just a recorded video, right? If you have question later, you find ways to ask me. Okay, clear? Now we have here another problem. Find the coordinates of the endpoint. So let me draw a figure. Where is it? Okay, here. Oops. Oops. Okay. This is the figure of that. This is just an illustration. Assume that it's a midpoint. So in this problem, you're asked for the midpoint. Find the midpoint. You're asked to find for the midpoint. I mean the endpoint. See? So this is endpoint. This is another endpoint. Okay, you see that? This is endpoint. Endpoint. Oops. This one is midpoint. Okay, endpoint, endpoint, midpoint. The problem is we find the problem now is we're gonna look for the coordinates of the other endpoint, meaning one endpoint is given, the midpoint is also given, you look for the other endpoint. So for example, find the coordinates of x if y is the midpoint of xz. So you're gonna find the coordinates. So when you say coordinates, you find the ordered pair for that point z. Open parenthesis, telang, comma, telang, close parenthesis. That's the ordered pair. Okay, so xz. So we have to know the representation of the point. See, if y is the midpoint, so y is the midpoint. So this negative 1, 6 is the midpoint. And then z is an endpoint, 2, 8. Okay, so z is an endpoint, 2, 8. You're looking for the coordinates of x. The coordinates of your x, your first point. So remember a while ago, from first point, x1, y1. Second point, x2, y2, and then you get the midpoint. So here, it looks like we don't have x1, y1, but we have x2, y2 for the z, and we have the midpoint, which is negative 1, 6. Let's say that midpoint is xy. Okay, xy. So you see, this is now our midpoint. So the midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2. Your x2 is positive 2 from this one, all over 2, comma, y1. That's the y of the x, which we don't know. We're looking for it, plus 8, which is the y2 from z. Okay. So we cannot solve this formula like from here in this part here. Rather, we're gonna separate our x and our y. Okay, so this x is equal to the negative 1. Okay, remember we have to be careful. Why this negative 1 and 6? Because that's the one representing the midpoint of xz. So y is the midpoint. So whatever is the point given to be midpoint, that goes to this side. Okay, so you see we separate x1 plus 2 over 2 over here, or negative 1 is equal to x1 plus 2 all over 2. And then the others, for the y's, we have 6 equals y1 plus 8 all over 2. Solve them separately. So bring 2 to the other side to eliminate the fraction or denominator. So it's going to be negative 2 equals x1 plus 2. Minus 2 on both sides because you're solving for x1. So you want the positive 2 to be eliminated. So you need to minus 2 on both sides. and then it becomes -4 equals x1. So you have now your x1, which is -4. Now you solve for your y1 here. So again, since there's over 2, put it to the other side, just multiply it to the other side. 6 times 2 is 12 equals y1 plus 8. Subtract 8 on both sides because we just want y1 to be a loner variable. Then it becomes 12 minus 8 is 4. So your final answer is -4, 4. Remember, you're making an ordered pair. You're making an ordered pair. So the first number must be the number for the x. That's why -4 comes first. And kasi L4, -4, that's wrong. It should be -4, comma 4 because your y is 4, your 4 is y, so that becomes your second number. Remember, in every ordered pair, it's always x, y. That's the arrangement of numbers inside the ordered pair. Okay, so I hope you understand. I hope you can answer the classwork that I have posted. And if there's still anything that I can do to you guys, let me just know, and I'll see if I can do it for you. Okay, I cannot show my face, guys, because something's wrong with the lighting here. Where am I tonight or today? Okay.